So, is that showing the presentation for you guys?
Yes.
Awesome. So, again, as I mentioned to start out, last week I focused on agents because that's the thing that is supposed to be 2026 is the year of the agent, and as part of agents, there is a protocol that Anthropic developed last year called the Model Context Protocol. And what that is, it's kind of a hub, so you don't have to know every single integration point of everything that you want to connect. This is a standardized method for AI to talk to other applications with as little integration as you need to do. And so let's go on with that. And so it's not going to be technical deep dive. It's not going to be a build session. It's just understanding what it is and how it could affect your risk and cost. So the agents have been capturing headlines. It's one of those things that, again, everything you say, it's like, this is the year of the agent. But it solves different problems. Agents act and the MCP informs. And so most businesses are mixing up those ideas and then they're not getting true direction and they have expensive infrastructure mistakes or the mistakes aren't readily showing. They creep up on you. And so, again, the Model Context Protocol, Anthropic came up with it because it solved technical problems of having to understand what your APIs are and what your connection points are and everything like that. And so it's an architecture and it's not a true, it doesn't handle a lot of other things that will go on. So it is the standardized protocol for enabling models to access external stuff, your documents, your tools, APIs, CRMs, databases, anything without hard coding or vendor-specific integrations. It creates a unified interface. It allows your businesses to talk the data to talk to each other, but every time you talk to each other, there's going to be security aspects and things that you may have to consider. And it shifts the integration complexity from model providers into your system architecture. And so it changes the responsibilities and the risks involved. It's access only. It doesn't do reasoning or anything like that. It's just a connection tool, a hub in a way. Simple analogy is when computers started coming out, there was all those different types of connections. There were USBs and custom plugs, and there was, I don't know if you have a junk drawer or a technology drawer in your desk, but you probably have thousands of cables that don't connect to anything anymore. And so the USB came out to help solve that. So you could standardize to simple cabling and you didn't have to have all of those devices. So MCP is very similar. It standardizes how AI accesses data and your business context. Again, whether that's documents, CRMs, data, it's just a standardized way. So what it doesn't do, and this is where a lot of people are still, since it's relatively new to a lot of people and agents are kind of new, it does not make things smarter. It does not improve reasoning. It doesn't improve decision quality or your output. It's just a connector. It doesn't improve reasoning again. It it relies on your context availability. It doesn't translate better judgment. It doesn't have the human oversight. Again, it's a connector. And it does not replace the process. You need clear, documented, consistent processes that you can apply underneath this technology. Without the structure, the design, the governance, and human oversight, these are just going to increase. It'll make confusion scale faster. It doesn't make your business run any better. It's just an easy way to connect. It's powerful, but it requires discipline. And so the reason it exists is because of all these agents were coming out, and each one required continuous, reliable connections. They had one-off API calls, they had special instruction sets, and it became very brittle because every time you implemented a different version, you had different connection points, and one connection point could possibly break another one. And so every provider had their own approach. And so when Anthropic came up with this idea, it solved a lot of the problems. It also overlooked some of the problems, especially in the area where Dan's good with is security. It doesn't include a lot of that, even though they're adding things on. And there were some, if you read the news and keep up with it, just this week, it was discovered that they found 3 security holes within that allowed for prompt injection. And so, again, you have to keep up with the technology and monitor it. And it is getting better, but it's still a new technology, and there are going to be bugs. But again, you have to understand where the real work and where the real risks are. It's an attempt to standardize, but there are going to be holes. And so here's the big problem, the hype that everybody's saying. It's the year of the agent. 2026 is agents. And because of agents, MCPs are positioned as to make things better. But in reality, it's just infrastructure. It allows you to, it can be slow, it can have bottlenecks. It's better than not having it, but there's a gap between what it really does, and it's not a magic bullet or magic wand that people are trying to hype it up as. And so have to really disassociate the marketing versus the reality. If it's not stable, your failure is going to be magnified. So here we are talking about the reality of it. MCP assumes maturity. That means mature data, mature processes, mature ownership. Most businesses skip those, and they just try to implement their AI tool. It doesn't remove any of the guardrails that you need to apply to your business. So again, if you don't have your documentation complete, if you don't have ownership of the data, you don't have responsibility of who manages it. If the distribution is unclear, you're going to just accelerate the chance of failure by trying to bring in tools like this. So context without control doesn't just fail, it fails in a compounding way. It creates technical debt and operational liability, and it will present just future problems that, again, are compounded as you try to improve. So here's failure point number 1, the context without ownership. If you can't answer these 3 questions, you're not ready for implementing this in your system. This will just make the gap critical. So who owns the data that's being accessed, and who is there a single authority who's responsible for updates, and is there a documented line of authority and authentication around that data? Do you have everybody access it? Is there a true owner? Is there access rules around who gets access? And when you have those rules, are they being implemented in your AI workflows? And if the MCP connections bypass security reviews, again, you're just introducing more potential issues. And then who has authority to revoke the access, which is just as strong as who has the ability to request or approve access. Who can revoke access? Because when something goes wrong, which it most likely will, can somebody shut down the MCP immediately, and who's responsible for the consequences? Most small businesses can't answer these questions consistently, and if you can't, step away until you can. 2, undocumented workflows. And this is something I also hype about myself. My hype is that people don't document their processes. Still a lot of tribal knowledge. meaning the owner or the person who created the situation. It's all in their head, and there's things like, oh, everybody knows how it works. We've always done it this way. And there's always going to be gaps. There's going to be things that are undocumented or assumptions that are going to be made. And if you try to bring in AI or automation or an MCP server to apply those, it's going to just, again, compound potential problems. And so documentation, your standard operating procedures, your security controls around your data, those should all be documented before you go anywhere, because this is just going to expose your weaknesses faster and maybe more visibly. Failure point 3, permission sprawl. They dramatically lower the cost of connecting everything. You can connect your CRMs, your files, your dashboards, your databases, everything. But again, without MCP or without the rules and guardrails and guidelines, integration creates natural permission boundaries. After the easy integration removes the connection friction, but it doesn't make everything restricted. So you have, without a mature process or permission model around your data and your processes, the visibility becomes increased. And so, again, giving permission, revoking permission. You have to have somebody that's responsible for the ownership. And again, that ownership needs to be documented. And here's a big point here, the hidden cost escalations, because a lot of people don't really take this into mind when they bring in AI, automation, and an MCP server. There's going to be a lot of background stuff. Your token usage from the background context is going to be drastically increased. There's going to be data retrieval, data output, and you don't really have predictable usage costs unless you take that into consideration when you first start. There's a lot of indirect API costs. API calls will cost money. What it looks like when one slows down, there's going to be other calls that are possibly connected to other resources. So if one resource goes down, is it going to have downstream effects? Is there going to be latency? Is there going to be extra costs? Your connector maintenance, having somebody totally responsible and knowing what APIs are in use, what needs to be updated. Are you affecting your data schemas? Who gets updated when? Do you have ownership of that? If something goes wrong, do you know who to turn to? And a lot of people think that you can remove the human oversight, but that should never disappear, because again, AI does not have judgment. It doesn't understand the true context. It only understands the data it's been provided. And so without human oversight, there's potential for lots of unexpected costs, and there's no true ownership of when things go wrong, of who's responsible to fix that. Accountability gaps, again, keep harping on these same type of things. If an AI system has direct access to your live production environments, where's the accountability? Who's responsible when AI makes an error? Is there enough error tracking to know when there's an error? And has it been compounded? How long has it been happening? What has it really affected? If you have all this automation in the background and things are connected to multiple systems, where is that point of failure? Is it a single point, or has it been spread throughout the system? Who has the authority to sign off on changes? Do you have a change management system in place? Approval workflows, requirements, testing, rollbacks, all of these things. If you look at the vibe coding world right now, everybody says, oh yeah, use it to write this. You don't need all these people. But the thing is that they have a single source. They don't provide you a development environment to go into a testing environment, to go into a production environment. They just say, here, push it to production. And they don't have those extra guardrails or change management associated with it. And then who's going to take the blame when things go wrong? Because again, things do go wrong. And so is there a person responsible for making these decisions and taking the blame when something goes wrong. You need an AI system owner, and first of all, again, you need to have AI literacy within the organization to understand what you're using AI for, but there needs to be an overall system owner to maintain and manage. And that's a role that really doesn't exist, or it may be starting to be implemented in organizations, but a lot of people don't really have an AI owner within their organization.
Hey, Chuck, I think that there's also not uh, trust but verify owner to attack the system and try and break it.
True. That's another thing that needs to be brought into your implementation plans is the whole change management process and the ownership and getting that testing, proving that things work, trying to break it. That's a very important thing. So my approach that I use is a systems first ladder. And number one is to document your workflows, write down exactly what happens on each step, who's responsible for that step, and what it costs to run that step in a manual way. So if you have an administrative person who is doing entry into your CRM or something like that, that it they follow a certain process, they enter data, they verify it, they make an appointment, and then they're being costed out at $35 an hour, and it takes them an hour to do it, so that's a $35 cost. And so if you know what steps they have, who's responsible, and what your cost is, that's your first step into doing your diagnosis for your return on investment to see, okay, an AI solution or an automation solution will cost this much. And so you can do a direct comparison and find your true operating cost. And then data stability. Data is, there's so many different sources, it's often inconsistent and unreliable, and without clear ownership, validation, and maintenance processes for your data, garbage in, garbage out. Again, compounded, it can do it really fast, but it's still garbage. And so you need to have that clear ownership of who's going to be responsible for making sure the data is clean before you rely on running it through a system that automates it. Standardize your inputs and outputs. Create predictable interfaces. Define what is actually going in, what is coming out, and what success looks like. So you can say that you want to do something, but is it something that is a true output that you want or an outcome that you want? You can add AI assistance, but always keep humans in the loop. Let AI suggest, but not decide. Humans need to take control of critical actions. If you can build trust through supervised operations, then you know you can possibly automate it. But again, there should always be a human in the loop to review, to validate, to verify. So when you're starting out, start narrow. Start with your lowest risk, high repetition work. Keep it repeatable. If you can do it consistently, manually, and it's documented, then you can start to implement it in contained environments where you know if you expand the scope, you have steps to slowly remove human oversight if you want to do that. But again, start with low risk, high repetition work, and prove it first. And then once you have those low risk systems proven, then you can start considering bringing in an MCP server to attach multiple systems. Only after you have your foundation, your documentation, things are standardized, you have the trust, you have the ownership, then you can start implementing bigger automated processes. And that's where the MCP server would be your hub to connect everything. The critical truth is that the model context protocol does not fix broken systems. It connects them faster. So always step back. It's not a magic wand. It doesn't have anything to do with data quality, your permissions, your documentation. It knows nothing about that. It has a set, here's the data I want you to use, here's the rule that I want you to apply, here's the outcome you're expecting. But without that being documented, again, it doesn't fix broken systems. It just makes them faster. And so you're going to fail faster and probably bigger. And so remember, it doesn't fix broken things. You have to step back and make sure you have everything, your processes and systems in place before you bring this stuff in. So when you don't want to do it, if you have inconsistent data, if you have unclear permissions, if your processes are changing all the time, you don't have true ownership of who's in charge of your AI prompts, your MCP prompts, you're monitoring it. If you don't have troubleshooting implemented at the same time, you cannot expect set it and forget it. Those are the old days of Excel. You knew what Excel was. You bring the same spreadsheet up. Now the spreadsheet itself, you want to constantly monitor, but the application never changed. What people expect AI is you plug it in and we have AI, but they don't realize that somebody has to maintain those prompts. The technology gets updated, the skills update, the processes may change. So if you answer no to any of these, then MCP is going to be premature. So now later, here's where it can start to make sense. If you have read-only analytics, if you have consistent data and you just want it to pull out from a consistent source, you can start getting read-only data. It's not going to modify anything. It's just going to be able to use that as a data input source to get to some other point. If you have internal knowledge bases, and again, if it's connected to a wiki or a knowledge base or a Notion database that is unchanging data or updated, but you don't want it to automatically update, you want to retrieve data. If you have controlled operations data dashboards, give the AI visibility just to bring in using it as source data. If you have technical teams with strong documentation, that's a great place for it. If you have clear ownership and auditability of your data and your processes, that's another good source. So again, look for low risk, observable outcomes, clear boundaries, and that will decide when this could be successful. So it's not a starting point. This is something that is an amplifier. So it's going to make things faster. It's going to make things connect more easily, but you need to have everything in there. And so the first thing is to get your systems stronger. When you have your foundation set, when your documentation is there, your data is reliable, you have ownership, you have permissions, then you can make this to be a force multiplier, and it can be extremely powerful. But if you have a weak system, you're just going to fail faster. So again, its amplification is neutral. It doesn't judge quality. It doesn't have a human in the loop. It just makes everything more visible, faster, and then harder to reverse once it fails. So that's also something, looking at your point of failure and making sure that you can back it out, you can turn it off, you can fall back, but you still have to have somebody responsible for that. And a documented ownership is a good point to start. So instead of asking, can we use MCP, which focuses on the technical capability? Yeah, you probably could, but you don't want to say, can we use it? What you should say is, what should never be automated? Focus on your business judgment, and again, systems which are too critical, if it's something that's controlling your finances, if it's controlling how your business is run or dealing with customers, step back and add that human oversight, because so it's what should never be automated instead of can we use it? And it's philosophical. First question again is, automation can be good, but the second one, it's more strategic. It's like, where do we not want to touch at this point until you have all of those boundaries defined? Ambiguity creates risk. So the future, the marketing says the future is agents, but it's really not. It's going to continue advancing. Models are getting smarter. Integration's getting easier, but sophistication doesn't determine success. What you want to do is have the accountability, clear ownership, defined responsibilities, documented systems, mature governance, all of that stuff. So context is power, but power without a system behind it is chaos. So MPCs can give you unprecedented access to your context, but it assumes all of those things that I've been harping on. It can create chaos and it compounds over time. It can be progressively harder to unwind. So have fallback systems, have documented processes, have procedures that just think back and before you automate, get clarity of your systems. And with that, that is what I have. And so I'm going to stop recording.